Hey guys, my name is Brandon, aka the BrandoCritic, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different for this review of Thor: Love and Thunder. First of all, sorry for getting it out so late. As you guys can tell from my voice, I'm still a little bit under the weather. I was actually getting sick in the theater for Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm like, I feel terrible. I feel a sickness coming on. I cannot review this movie this weekend. It'll have to wait. But because this video is so late, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I'm filming this before I go live, but I'm going to actually go onto a live stream to talk about this movie with you guys and have some of your input on the movie as well. I have some notes going over my general thoughts on the movie, and I wanted to discuss it with you guys, so I'm going to chop that live stream up, put it in this video, and then we'll see how it goes. So if you want to see more videos just like this, again, it's getting a bit experimental here. I wanted to try something new. Let me know what you guys thought of it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Let's go. Hey guys, my name is Brandon, aka the BrandoCritic, and welcome to my review for Thor: Love and Thunder. This is a bit of a different review because I'm going to be talking about it live with you guys, and I have some notes right here, and I'm just going to be going into it, getting into my honest thoughts, because I'll be honest, I didn't want to see Thor: Love and Thunder. I really didn't. Because, like I've said for many years now, after Endgame, my hype for the MCU has really died down. And somebody said this on the internet, and I think it's the perfect way to describe all of these Phase 4 projects. Watching these Phase 4 Marvel movies after Endgame is kind of like doing the side quests for a video game after completing the final boss. It just doesn't have that same weight. It doesn't have those same emotional stakes. It just kind of feels like an afterthought. And again, guys, sorry for my voice. I am still under the weather. That's why I haven't done this review yet. So when it came to this movie opening night, I did not want to see it, but I had to see it. At least I felt like I had to see it because I knew that people would be wanting to hear my opinions on it because it's a Marvel film. And honestly, like, that's the thing. Marvel has become this behemoth of a monster that you just kind of have to see it, even though you don't want to. And for my overall thoughts on the movie, they were just very okay. This was a very meh movie, and even after watching it, getting very sick in the theater, I'm like, I just don't want to talk about this movie. But I know that a lot of you guys want to talk about it, want to hear my thoughts, so here we are. So I think my opening night experience for this movie really sums up my thoughts on the movie and my thoughts on the MCU. So I'm watching this movie opening night in a packed crowd. Unfortunately, Vancouver did not have a press screening for Thor: Love and Thunder, so I got to see it in an opening night theater with a packed crowd. And of course, I'm thinking it's a Marvel movie. It's going to be a great time, even though, you know, maybe the movie might not be the best movie in the world, but at least the audience will be really into it. But something really fascinating happened. This movie, going into it, I heard that this is like a really funny movie. It's a Taika Waititi movie, right? So if you didn't like Thor Ragnarok, then you're really not going to like this one because it doubles down on the comedy. That's what I kept hearing going into it. So I'm like, okay, it's going to be a funny movie. Totally fine. But there was no laughter in the theater. Not once. Not from me, not from anyone else in the theater. But what was really interesting was at the end, almost everyone clapped. I didn't clap because I don't think clapping at the end of a movie is a useful thing to do because the filmmakers aren't actually back there in the projection room. But everyone was clapping. And I'm thinking, you guys didn't laugh at a single joke. You guys didn't seem to be into the movie, but yet you clapped at the end. So I'm thinking, are people just conditioned to like Marvel even though they know deep down that they didn't really find it that funny? But then I went on Twitter and I found out that a lot of people had the same thoughts as me. This was a very meh, boring, bland, unfunny movie. But what was really interesting about that was that a lot of the Marvel fanboys who just love every single thing that Marvel does were like freaking out. They're like, oh my God, how are people turning on my baby? Oh, it's really cool to hate Marvel nowadays, huh? And I think that we're starting to see a major shift in the identity of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the public eye. I think that Marvel burnout is finally catching up to a large portion of the fan base. Now, here are my thoughts on the movie. Now, the hero. Thor himself, played by Chris Hemsworth. I think Chris Hemsworth is a pretty good Thor, but I do feel like he's becoming a parody of himself. He's kind of turning into the Jack Sparrow of the MCU. And what do I mean by that? Jack Sparrow is one of my favorite characters of all time. You can see right there, I have Pirates of the Caribbean on VHS, my favorite movie of all time, one of my greatest favorite characters of all time. But you gotta admit, though, that in the sequels, he became a parody of himself. He started to basically do a Jack Sparrow impression as opposed to actually being Jack Sparrow. And I feel like that's the case with Thor here now, too. He's doing, we're going off on a grand Thor adventure. Even though in the first movie, he played it very serious. Whereas in the newer films, of course, Taika Waititi comes on and Chris Hemsworth's personality really shines through in the role. And I feel like Chris Hemsworth has kind of taken over the role of Thor. You're watching Chris Hemsworth on screen, not Thor on screen. And his arc about finding love and being okay with opening up your heart to love, I don't know, I really found it to be quite dull and not very interesting. The villain, Christian Bale, I thought, just like No Time to Die, was extremely underused, and I thought that, you know, we could have had a really interesting villain, but of course this is Marvel, and Marvel seems to have a very hard time with its villains. They've been on a pretty good track record lately, and I think Thanos is one of the greatest villains in recent cinematic history, but I found him to be quite dull and uninteresting because he was underused. And I find that if a villain is really threatening, like if I'm genuinely scared of them and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can our hero defeat them? Then I'm really engaged. I didn't get that engaged with Christian Bale's character in this movie. And I thought it could have been a great story, a great revenge story, but in the entire film, I felt like there were no stakes. There was no emotion. There was no weight. There was nothing really urgent about this movie. It felt like just kind of eating white bread, eating a rice cake. It's just like, just eat the slop, guys. This is Thor. Look at all these colorful colors. Look at all the Guns N' Roses music. And the humor. I felt it to be very, very, very on the nose. Like you have infinity scones, or they have like this, you know, new type of Asgard that turns into like a theme park, and you have this infinity stone type of ice cream. And I'm thinking to myself, people were talking about this on Twitter, of course, it just feels very, very odd to have a joke about this in a movie, where it's just like, if the movie's not taking its stakes seriously, then how can we take anything seriously in the movie? You know what I mean? And I feel like if you really want to get invested, there has to be some danger. There has to be some emotion, some urgency. And this film really, really lacked that. But if it's a comedy, fine. But you're supposed to laugh in a comedy. And just poking fun at the stakes, I feel like really just doesn't work. The action I found to be extremely underwhelming. And just for an overall score, I'm going to have to give it a 2 out of 5. I found this movie to be just very, very, very underwhelming. Very bland, very meh. It's a shame. You know, I really wanted to like this movie, and I want to like all the MCU movies. Of course, if we're going to keep getting them, I just want to make sure that they're good, and I want to enjoy them, even though my hype for them has really, really, really sunk down to the floor. But like Doctor Strange, I thought this one was just okay. But the more I think about it, the more I'm disappointed in it, because I'm thinking about Winter Soldier, and I'm thinking about Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm thinking about Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and just how these Phase 4 projects do not even come close to that level of success in my eyes, of course. Not even No Way Home. I think No Way Home really works just because of all of the old legacy characters. MCU burnout is real, guys, and I've really, really hit it. So those are my thoughts on Thor Love and Thunder. Just another miss from the MCU. And I still find it funny how a lot of people online who talk about movies, everyone seems to only be talking about the MCU still. I think it's time we just need to move on. I know they've been planning a bunch of other movies. There's Fantastic Four, and then I think there's Blade coming. Again, if we're getting them, I hope they're good. But in terms of excitement, I feel like we just need to close this book and move on to something else.